I couldn't hold back my emotions. I exclaimed as steam practically came out of my ears across the bar. My friend Amy, who was wiping down glasses, just flashed a simple grin. She was tending the bar like a seasoned pro. This was Amy's bar, named after her late husband, a clever nod to his legacy of helping patrons claim they frequented gyms. It was a cozy spot, a joint Amy and Tom had fought hard to keep afloat. Tom's relentless toil eventually led him to an early grave, leaving Amy to use his life insurance to settle debts and honor his memory by keeping the bar alive. "All right, Clara," Amy said, topping off my wine glass. "Let me get this straight. You're not upset that Mike, your husband, cheated. It's about who he cheated with." I took a sip, thinking about her question. "Are you blaming me, Amy? Have you seen her?" The woman in question, Nancy, was a sight: overweight, chain-smoking, and brash. She worked a middle management job in some bureaucratic abyss, churning out documents for yet another pointless government agency. Amy set a few more glasses on the counter. "Clara, you realize that Mike's fling with Nancy happened before you even met him, right?" I looked around the nearly empty bar, just a couple of guys shooting pool in the back. "Who cares, Amy? Look at me," I said, rising from my bar stool and spinning around to show off my yoga-toned body before sitting back down. "And compare this to, well, hers." Amy draped a towel over her shoulder. "Your husband Mike made a commitment by marrying you. I don't get why this is bothering you." What if he wasn't the one who ended it? Learning that Nancy and Mike had been an item for over a year, I grimaced. What if Nancy dumped Mike? That means I signed up for a guy who wasn't even good enough for Nancy. It's sickening. "Clara," Amy said, "what one person discards, another cherishes. Nancy's loss is your gain." "Easy for you to talk, Amy. You're not the one having to sleep with a guy who's been messing around with Nancy for over a year." Amy leaned casually against the counter, a smirk on her lips. "Maybe Nancy had some bedroom skills that kept Mike interested. Perhaps you two should swap recipes." I nearly choked on my wine. "Just so you know, anyone who's been in my kitchen leaves completely satisfied and always craving more?" Amy arched an eyebrow. "I may not be a saint, but I'm far from being some sleazy streetwalker." Amy chuckled, giving my shoulder a comforting pat. "Physical stuff is only scandalous when done right." I could feel my face flushing. "Amy, please, this is serious. I'm not okay with this." Amy shook her head. "Physical stuff takes the least time but causes the most problems." Ignoring her remark, I traced my finger along the rim of my glass. It's just hard to envision a future with Mike when his past with that Nancy woman keeps haunting him. Amy fixed her gaze on me. "Clara, have you ever heard the saying, 'The past is behind you. Learn from it. The future is ahead. Prepare for it'?" Then a somber expression clouded her face. "Don't you adore Tom the cat? I adore that massive black feline. He's the largest cat I've ever seen, like a pint-sized panther." "Great," I retorted. "Mike and Tom have always been a pair. Maybe Tom can show Mike how to do a proper job. In the 5 years we've been married, Mike hasn't held down steady employment. He's never put his business education to use." Amy regarded me with a puzzled expression. "You can't be serious. People from abroad ship their antique wooden pieces here for restoration." "Yeah, I get it, but it's uncomfortable at our office gatherings when Mike mentions he's into woodworking. I dislike the idea that he comes off as some rustic lumberjack. He could have climbed halfway up the corporate ladder by now if he wanted. Instead, Mike prefers tinkering in the garage." "Clara, I've seen Mike's garage. It's more like a professional workshop, better equipped than many woodworking shops." "That's my garage," I snapped, "part of my grandfather's home, which he left me after my parents passed away." "But didn't Mike completely renovate all the wooden floors in the house?" "Yes, but... and all the moldings and doorways, too?" "What about the front porch steps and trim?" "Sure, but... and let's not forget about the fireplace," Amy remarked, reaching under the counter and producing a magazine. She slid a glossy 2-page spread in front of me. "Clara, isn't that you on the elegant staircase Mike crafted from scratch, featured in National Home magazine?" All right, Amy, but I was the one dealing with all that dust. And now your house is on the county's historic register. If Mike had taken any of those job offers he had after school, we could have made a decent amount of money and hired someone else to do that kind of work. You don't know what it's like to rely solely on one income, mine. It's not a situation that leaves me thrilled. Amy rolled her eyes. I believe it was Groucho Marx who once said, "What good is happiness if it can't be bought with money?" I took another sip of my wine. Seriously, Amy, Mike getting turned down by Nancy and his meager income aren't exactly the keys to my happiness. What's the key? Do you really think having enough money unlocks happiness? Amy shook her head. Seriously, Clara, my goodness, were you and your siblings blessed with intelligence? Do you understand how antique restoration generates income? Are you making payments on that new Lexus you got last year? Well, no, I stuttered. Mike paid for the car in full right after I picked it out. Amy set the magazine aside. Having a lot of money doesn't make you special. More often than not, it just means you're fortunate. Swirling the wine in my glass, I couldn't help but remark, "It's easy for you to say. The last time I saw Mike in a suit was at my mom's funeral. The guy practically lives in faded jeans." Amy stretched, placing the glasses on the top shelf. It was folks in jeans who built this country. It's the fools in suits who are tearing it down. Just then, Mike slid into the seat next to me. So, what are my two lovely ladies discussing? Amy turned to Mike. Tell me, son, how much did your little lumber business bring in last year? A look of surprise flashed across Mike's face. You mean the income statement? He chuckled. A gentleman never discusses money or his women. Amy shifted her attention from me to Mike. We were just discussing your wife's new Lexus. What about you? Have you replaced your old pickup truck yet? Mike glanced at Amy, surprised. Why? It might be 15 years old, but aside from some rust, it runs perfectly fine. Trying to divert the conversation, I interjected. Speaking of people you know, Nancy is now leading the homeowners association next door. That's nice, Mike replied absent-mindedly, picking up the menu. Amy, is my order ready? Just then, one of the pool players signaled for another beer, holding up an empty bottle and gesturing 5 fingers. Amy stepped away to attend to the order, leaving Mike and me alone. Mike, did you catch what I mentioned? Mike turned the page of the menu. Of course, Clara. You mentioned that Nancy is now heading the homeowners association. It shouldn't bother us. The house is in great shape. You're not concerned? Mike set the menu aside and glanced at me with a puzzled expression. Huh? I don't care if the house is in great shape, you idiot, I exclaimed, pushing the menu away. I'm talking about Nancy. Mike looked genuinely embarrassed. So, what about Nancy? God, you men can be so dense, I sighed. You and her? Me and her what? Mike inquired. You two have met before? I used my fingers to gesture quotation marks around the word met. Mike shook his head. Yeah, Nancy and I dated before I met you, so what? Before me, you were dating the quarterback, Mr. All-American High School. That reminds me. Could you call him tomorrow and check on our car insurance? I want to extend the coverage on your Lexus. There's a difference, Mike. The Mr. All-American High School, as you called him, now sells us insurance, is married, has 2 children, and a picket fence that you helped him install. A smile spread across Mike's face. Ah, I see you want 2 children. That's great, Clara. You know I've been eager for us to start a family. Don't worry about your job. I've got orders lined up for the next 2 years. You can always return to work after. Mike's voice trailed off as I stormed off my bar stool and out of the bar. The house felt chilly over the next few days. Perplexed, Mike gave me space, burying himself in his workshop with yet another of his projects. Amy said I was overreacting, even suggesting that too many women seek the right person instead of striving to be the right one. But I couldn't shake my feelings. I mean, who wants someone else's leftovers? That's why I found myself at Nancy's house, hoping to uncover the truth. Sure you don't want a beer? Nancy asked, settling into a chair in her pantsuit, cigarette in one hand and a store-brand beer in the other. No thanks, Nancy. I replied, perching on the edge of her couch, careful not to touch anything. Surveying Nancy's home, I couldn't believe she had any say in matters of taste. Her decor resembled a 60s trailer park with lion and leopard prints adorning every surface. "Suit yourself," Nancy shrugged, popping open the beer she held in her hand. Her little dog leaped into her lap and she affectionately petted it, making kiss noises. "Let me tell you, Clara, if there aren't any dogs in heaven, then when I kick the bucket, I want to head wherever they are." Nancy continued conversing with the dog before turning to me. "Lots of folks talk to animals, but not many bother to listen to them. That's the issue." I struggled to keep my stomach settled, the smoke stinging my eyes. "Nancy, I'm surprised you're still smoking. You know you work for the government with all its anti-tobacco regulations." Nancy exhaled a plume of smoke. "It's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that smoking tops the charts in terms of statistics." Attempting to join in with a light chuckle, I shifted the conversation to general homeowner inquiries, aiming to uncover the real motive behind my visit. However, Nancy struck me to the punch later in our discussion. "Does Mike still have that big old black cat, Tom?" I winced before replying. "Yes, Nancy. Tom the cat still belongs to Mike." "Darn it," Nancy said. "That cat never belonged to anyone. Tom came and went as he pleased." She took another sip from the can. "Mike mentioned we used to bump into each other back when that other guy was president. I don't think you were around then." "Yeah, Mike mentioned you two used to be an item," I said, trying not to reveal my surprise. Nancy exclaimed, slapping her thigh. "Have you guys crossed paths? Damn, we were like rabbits in bed for over a year. I couldn't get enough of him." "So you and Mike have split up. What happened?" "He just wasn't my type. Sure, he's a nice guy, handsome, a bit on the skinny side for my taste, but funny, great in bed and all that. Mike's just not my cup of tea." "Got it. Not your type. Is it true? Did Mike do something to cause the breakup?" "No, nothing like that. I'm sure he's a great match for someone like you, but Mike wasn't the man I was looking for." I laughed nervously, though inside I wanted to explode. "Wow, Nancy, sounds like you're searching for Superman." Grinning as she sipped her beer, Nancy chuckled. "Well, it's nice to have a superhero around if you catch my drift." She crushed the beer can before tossing it into the nearby trash. "As much as I'd love to keep swapping stories about our exes, I've got to get back to business now, Clara. Any homeowner questions for me?" I swallowed back the bitterness, wondering if Nancy could sense the steam rising from my ears as I retrieved the folder from my purse. Meeting Nancy only worsened my already foul mood. Mike pondered, realizing I didn't want to talk. He gave me space, diving into his workshop and volunteering as a youth soccer coach. With Mike away on a 2-day trip, I found myself at Tom's bar, seated beside Amy as she polished glasses. The bar was moderately busy for a weeknight, with a particularly boisterous group of suits at one table. "Where's your acrobat?" Amy inquired, pouring me a glass of white wine. I took a sip before responding. "Mike took his truck to fetch some old wooden relic that some wealthy fool wants to restore. If they have so much money, why not buy new things? What's the appeal of paying 10 times more for some old junk when you could have something good and new?" Amy shook her head. "Are you talking about Mike or his latest project?" "Both, neither, I don't know. It's all just so disheartening," I lamented. Amy tossed her towel over her shoulder. "Care for some cheese with that wine?" She rolled her eyes. "Life isn't solely about your destination. It's about the journey and the experiences. Mike's a great guy, so quit complaining." I stared at my glass. "Amy, I've got problems." Amy reached across the counter, giving me a mock peck on the cheek. "Quit whining. You're fixating on first world issues, like misplacing your TV remote, your Starbucks coffee being too cold, or an email attachment taking too long to load. Problems that impoverished people elsewhere would love to have instead of, say, struggling to access clean water or medicine for their sick child in a distant, unaffordable hospital." I recoiled. "Just because my issues aren't as grave as others doesn't mean I'm problem-free." "Yes, that's true," Amy replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "You hit the jackpot, Clara. Good job, great health, loving husband. Need I say more? I'd give up everything I own just to spend 20 minutes with my late husband. You were born with a silver spoon. Stop thinking you're unhappy." Amy's outburst stunned me, but she continued. "Listen, Clara, you can't be the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the baby at every baptism." Feeling insulted, I was about to retort when the bar doors swung open and a group of sweaty men in baseball uniforms flooded in. Amy's mood instantly lifted. "It's going to be a lively night. It's the Gay Men's Softball League." I grimaced. "You let guys like that in here?" She gave me a pointed look. "Seriously, Clara? If by guys like that you mean men with disposable income who spend generously on drinks and cause no trouble, then yes. Not only do I welcome these guys, I actively seek them out and welcome them. This is a bar, after all." Before I could respond, a towering black man approached the counter. He was the largest person I'd ever seen, standing over 6'10" tall and weighing around 250 pounds. The buttons on his broad chest strained against his uniform, emblazoned with the team name Master Batters. Amy must have been acquainted with this towering man, as she didn't protest when he reached over the counter and effortlessly lifted her up, much like a child lifting a Barbie doll. "Set me down, Leroy," Amy squealed as the giant gently placed her back on the ground. "No problem, Amy," Leroy responded in his deep baritone. "Thought you might want to meet the MVP of the Northeast League Southern Division Western Champions." Amy shyly batted her eyelashes. "Does your husband know you're flirting with the opposing team?" Leroy burst into laughter. "I wasn't always gay, just got sucked into it." It seemed to be an old joke as Amy merely rolled her eyes. "Sorry, Leroy, you know I don't mess with any man under 9 inches. Leroy pondered for a moment. "Damn, Amy, I'm not chopping off 3 inches." I was taken aback by their banter, but Amy seemed unfazed even when Leroy ordered. "That'll do, sweetheart. Bring 6 jugs of your finest draft ale for my fellow Batman warriors." He paused. "And some Pepsi, too." Amy began arranging the jugs on the counter. "Who's the teetotaler and why's he in my bar?" Leroy looked puzzled. "That'd be me, starting a 3-day shift at the fire station tonight." Amy turned to me, filling the jugs with beer. "Clara, my only waitress is out sick, and I'm short-handed tonight." She gestured to a group of suited men at a corner table. "Can you handle them?" "We've helped each other out in the past. Amy and I used to waitress together during school, so it's no big deal," I assured her. A rowdy group congregated at the table adorned with costumes. Tied ties were loosened, and jackets draped over chairbacks. A burly man, reminiscent of a former athlete, appeared to be the ringleader. "Hey guys," I greeted them with a smile. "What can I get for you?" I endured the usual barrage of comments about my phone number or physical attributes, a routine every waitress dealing with intoxicated men has faced since taverns started serving drinks. Over time, I'd become immune to such remarks from fraternity types, mentally filtering them out to the point where they barely registered. One of the suits stood up, towering over 6 feet tall. "Must have been my lucky day," he quipped, gesturing to the table. "Sorry about the commotion. My buddies are celebrating my recent promotion." He handed me a business card, confirming my suspicions. Below the name in bold gold font read the title, Senior Vice President, Interdepartmental Technology, Southern Hemisphere. "Impressive," I remarked, attempting to return the card. He waved it off. "Keep it. I'm feeling generous, so let's have another round, but only if you join us for a drink." I hesitated, but the table erupted into chants of, "Drink! Have a drink!" escalating until I relented just to appease them. Meanwhile, Amy was busy filling beer jugs while I tended to the drinks for my table. She noticed the business card I'd left on the bar. "Whose is this?" Amy inquired, nodding toward the shiny new card. I gestured toward the corner table. "The gentleman at that table, the tall one, looks like he's the new bigwig, and it seems he's got some cash to spare." Amy wiped the foam off the card's edge. "Remember what Grandma used to say about money not buying happiness?" I rolled my eyes. "They say money can't buy happiness, but I'd sure love to cry in my new Ferrari." Chuckling, Amy examined the card and burst into laughter. "What's so funny?" I inquired. She shook her head, reading aloud. Vice President of Interdepartmental Technology for the Southern Hemisphere. Don't you see? Look at the initials. H, it spells shithead. Your CEO's an idiot. Snatching the card, I scrutinized it again. After a moment, I shrugged. So what if it's not the classiest title? He still seems like a big shot. Amy remained unimpressed. Big shots are just small fry to other big shots. Mind your manners, I chuckled it off. But Amy placed her hand on my shoulder. Don't play the fool and don't do anything stupid to retaliate against an idiot. Shaking off her grip, I retorted, I won't. It's just a little jab back at Mike from Nancy. I'll just have a few drinks with them to keep things in check. Free drinks are free drinks, you know the saying. All the best things in life are free. Amy wasn't ready to let it go. The best things in life may be free, but they come at a hefty cost. In my defense, I was so intoxicated that I hardly remember what transpired next. I can't recall leaving the bar, reaching my house, or climbing the stairs to my bedroom. There are faint recollections of being carnal with the idiot in my bed, followed by a feeble climax. I think I momentarily sobered up during the second or third round when he accidentally caused me pain. "No!" I yelled, evading him and nearly tumbling off the bed. Barely discernible in the darkness, he nudged me with his paw. "You're not leaving me hanging, are you? I've still got one more round in the chamber." My head throbbed now as the inevitable hangover kicked in, and I started feeling remorseful about my actions. Placing my hand on his chest, I said, "Listen, I think it's best if you go. I can't have you staying the night. How about whipping up some breakfast?" I really didn't need that right now. My headache was worsening. "Real funny, but seriously, I need you to leave." I gestured toward the bathroom door as he got out of bed. As he made his way to the bathroom, I glanced at the clock on the dresser, its red LEDs displaying 3:18 a.m. The sound of running water ceased, and the strip of light under the bathroom door vanished. Amidst a creeping hangover and burgeoning guilt, reality began to sink in just as the bathroom door swung open, revealing the undressed silhouette of the idiot. The bedroom door creaked open simultaneously, revealing the outline of a figure holding something in their hands as they stealthily crossed the threshold. I shrieked, causing the intruder to halt in his tracks. The idiot burst out of the bathroom doorway, snatched a table lamp from the dresser, and struck the intruder on the back of the head. The unexpected blow sent the uninvited guest crashing to the floor. My scream ceased as I switched on the bedside lamp, hastily dialing emergency on my desk phone. I pleaded, "Send the police! There's a burglar in my house!" As the emergency operator began her scripted response, I glanced at the idiot, who was using a lamp cord to bind the intruder's hands behind his back. A chill ran down my spine. Roses dropped by the intruder littered the floor. Beside his hands lay a pair of work boots, presumably carried when he was struck. They were Mike's worn-out work boots. The idiot finished securing the knots, muttering, "You damn burglar, think you can sneak up on me?" As the idiot grabbed the intruder by the hair, lifting his head from the floor, my blood turned to ice as Mike's bloodied face came into view. A soft groan escaped his lips. I leaped off the bed, approaching my husband. "Get away from him! It's my husband!" The idiot wore a puzzled expression as he released Mike's hair, causing his face to thud against the floor. "Your husband? What the hell?" He didn't finish his sentence as a low growl emanated from the darkness beyond the bedroom door. For a moment, two yellow eyes glared at us before a swift black blur emerged from the darkness, latching onto the idiot's face. The idiot's screams mingled with a fierce growl as Tom the cat sank his claws and teeth into his head. They spun around as the idiot leaped up, attempting to pry Tom off, colliding with the window. Eventually, he managed to wrench the big black cat away from his scratched and bleeding face. Dodging a furious kick, Tom darted under the bed to safety. Grasping his injured face and swearing, the idiot cursed as I dropped to my knees, reaching for Mike's head. Suddenly, excruciating pain shot through my left buttock, as if dozens of knives had pierced me. Letting out a scream, I frantically tried to rid myself of the source of agony. Tom refused to release his grip, causing me to whirl around in pain, screaming the entire time. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon the idiot. still nursing his bleeding face and cursing at the cat. Finally, freeing myself from Tom's grasp, he retreated back under the bed. Paying no heed to the blood running down my leg, I hopped around, attempting to return to Mike, but inadvertently stepped on the idiot's foot. "You stupid idiot!" he roared, withdrawing his hand from his face to deliver a powerful blow to my head, sending me crashing onto the bed. "I'm going to strike you up!" he bellowed. Still reeling from the ringing in my ears, I watched as the idiot, his hand poised, advanced from the window toward me while I lay disoriented on the bed. However, before he could take another step, I witnessed Mike spring to his feet, his hands still bound behind his back. With a sudden burst of energy, Mike lunged forward, executing a gravity-defying somersault without using his arms. At the pinnacle of his mid-air spin, Mike seemed to rotate around both legs, striking the idiot in the chest and forcefully slamming him back into the wall, where he became ensnared in the window curtains. As soon as Mike fell on the ground, he sprang to his feet and dashed toward the idiot, who was still ensnared in the curtains. With a powerful shoulder thrust, Mike propelled him backward into the wall, then turned to shout at me. "Run, Clara! Run! Get out of here! Call for help! I'll handle this attacker!" I stood frozen in place, gazing at Mike's bloodied face, his hair drenched in blood as he struggled to restrain the idiot with his smaller frame. The curtains tore from the wall as the idiot raised his massive forearm and struck Mike's face with a sickening crack. Mike crumpled to the ground. The assailant kicked Mike, who groaned and rolled away from the blow. Advancing toward Mike, the idiot raised his foot high to stomp on him as he lay motionless on the floor. However, just as the idiot's leg began its descent, a black blur darted out from under the bed, and with a piercing growl, Tom the cat seized the assailant's groin. The idiot's shriek reached such a high pitch that it resembled a woman's cry. The screams persisted as the idiot leaned over, pounding Tom the cat in an attempt to dislodge the angry feline from his groin. Suddenly, Mike shook his head and surged up from the floor, thrusting his shoulder into the assailant's stomach. With a roar, Mike hoisted the idiot onto his back in a fireman's carry. His legs flailing, Mike propelled the three of them toward the large picture window of the bedroom. The cacophony of Mike's roar, the idiot's screams, and Tom's furious hissing was drowned out by the shattering of glass. I remained frozen on the bed, horror-stricken as the trio vanished from view, plummeting outside the window into the dark night. Their sounds were abruptly muffled, then ceased altogether. For a moment the room fell into silence, broken only by the flap of a curtain in the wind from the shattered window. Then came the soft patter of broken glass fragments falling. Suddenly, a piercing, heart-wrenching scream filled the room. It took my brain a few moments to register that I was the one screaming at the top of my lungs. My mind felt shrouded in a fog, but gradually the haze lifted as if I were resurfacing from underwater. Opening my eyes, I found myself face to face with an Asian woman in a blue hospital gown, gently dabbing my face with a cool towel. Our eyes met, and she set down the towel before hurrying off, murmuring, "I'll go fetch the doctor." As I turned my head, I spotted Amy seated in a chair beside my bed, yet my attempt to sit up was thwarted by the restraint securing my wrists and legs to the bed. "Damn it!" I yelled at Amy. "Get that nurse, Chinese, Vietnamese, whatever, and release me." Coming closer, Amy tried to calm me down. "Take it easy, Clara. You were unconscious all day. They had to restrain you because you were being combative. The nurse, whom I believe is Vietnamese, went to fetch the doctor." Still struggling, I insisted, "Chinese, Vietnamese, it doesn't matter. Just set me free now. I need to see Mike." "Calm down, Clara. You're fortunate I'm here. Leroy, the African-American fellow from the Gay Softball League, was among the first responders on the night of your incident. He remembered you were my friend and let me know you were here and what had happened," Amy said, her eyes misty as she recounted the events. My body sagged with shame at the memory of that night, knowing Amy was aware of what transpired. She continued, "They had to administer a sedative to you. The whole situation was unpleasant. But don't worry. Leroy got some of his firefighter buddies to use ladders to fix the broken window on the top floor of your house." Although I had been discharged, I had to sign numerous documents stating that I was acting against medical advice. I would need to schedule a follow-up appointment to be formally discharged from the hospital. All I could think about was seeing Mike. I would have signed a confession to the Kennedy assassination if it meant I could see Mike. However, when I glimpsed Mike through the ICU window, it was a shock. He was swathed in bandages, surrounded by tubes, bags, and machines. I was rendered speechless as I struggled to comprehend the medical jargon the doctor used to describe Mike's condition. I interrupted the doctor's detailed explanation. "Will Mike pull through?" The doctor paused, and I gripped Amy's hand tightly. After a moment, he responded, "I believe he'll survive, but it will be a challenging journey ahead. He'll need multiple rounds of reconstructive surgery and an extended recovery period. Unfortunately, some of the most effective treatments aren't covered by insurance. The procedures necessary for his optimal recovery will be quite costly." In that moment, I realized my deep love for Mike had always been there, just waiting for a tragedy to reveal it. Determined to demonstrate my love, I took action immediately. I emptied my retirement savings to finance his treatment. Early withdrawal penalties and tax consequences were insignificant compared to the need. I secured a substantial loan against my home, increased my credit card limits, and even traded in my Lexus for cash and an old van, believing it would facilitate Mike's transportation after treatment. The longing for Mike was profound. They say you only miss the sun when it starts to snow, and the light when the candle burns out. As the weeks passed, life felt like living in a perpetual hell. Mike's mental recovery lagged behind his physical healing. The neurosurgeon informed me that his memory would gradually return in fragments, but the timeline and extent were uncertain. I dreaded the possibility that he might recall the events of that fateful night. I dedicated hours to Mike, reminiscing over old photos, sharing anecdotes, and tirelessly searching for Tom the cat, who vanished that dreadful night. Despite distributing flyers, placing ads, and visiting shelters, the elusive feline remained elusive. Months passed uneventfully until the sight of 2 law enforcement officers exiting the rehabilitation facility sent a chill down my spine. Until then, I had successfully thwarted persistent detectives using a fortress of medical directives and legal documents to shield Mike. However, my world crumbled when I encountered resistance at the rehab center's front desk. The once friendly guards now wore stern expressions as they barred my passage to Mike's room. "Ma'am, we must insist you vacate the premises immediately," one guard stated firmly. "We're advising against your return until further notice," the other added. They ushered me out, pushing me toward the parking lot and my car. The following day, a police cruiser delivered a restraining order prohibiting any contact with Mike and mandating a distance of over 100 yards. Upon seeing Mike, I barely recognized him. Doubt clouded my mind. Perhaps I had erred in the date or location. Over a year had passed since our last encounter, and my life spiraled downward in every aspect. Despite my persistent attempts to reach out, Mike had rebuffed all communication. Yet determined to make our reunion inevitable, I followed the unfamiliar path to the rear of the grand estate. Passing furniture Mike had once restored, I stepped onto the porch to find a stranger before me, bald, with a vicious scar encircling a portion of his head. His once radiant blue eyes, which always brightened at the sight of me, now resembled hard stones, barely flickering with recognition. With a dark mustache and goatee, Mike resembled Walter White from Breaking Bad more than my husband. The sole identifier was the large black cat nestled in his lap, which Mike stroked. The sight of the bald man with the feline resembled a scene from a cheesy sci-fi film, with an ominous villain poised to destroy the world. Taking a shallow breath, I approached them with outstretched arms, hoping for a fresh start with a hug. However, Tom the cat leaped onto Mike's lap, his back arched, fur standing on end, tail raised, emitting a hissing growl with bared fangs. Mike extended his hand, palm facing me, and uttered harsh words. "Stop it, Clara. There's only one kitty here I'm interested in, and it's not you." I stood frozen, the words delivered in Mike's body lacking the smoothness of his usual voice. instead bearing a guttural tone reminiscent of Marlon Brando in The Godfather. Collecting myself, I took a seat across from Mike, separated by a small table cluttered with scattered folders and Tom still growling. "Quiet, Tom," I muttered, meeting Mike's gaze. "Where did you find Tom?" "I searched everywhere for him. I haven't seen Tom since—" Mike maintained his stern gaze, leaving an uncomfortable silence hanging between us. Finally, he broke it. "Well, Clara, Margie brought Tom to me. She found him injured and rushed him to the veterinary clinic. Seems like Tom had quite the pricey hospital stay, too." I muttered under my breath, "That woman," before forcing a smile. "I mean, that was kind of Marge. We'll have to find a way to repay her." Mike continued to pet Tom. "Yes, Clara, you want to talk, right?" I fought back tears. "Mike, I know I've made mistakes." He cut me off. "Mistakes make good stories, but lousy marriages." I pushed on. I started to see things differently. I thought I was better than I really was, smarter and more deserving. Now I know better. I awaited Mike's response, each second dragging on like an eternity before he spoke. "Beware of false knowledge. It's more dangerous than ignorance. Why are you here?" "I'm here, Mike, to apologize sincerely to show you I understand how you feel." He let out a bitter laugh. "Do you? I walk with a limp, have constant headaches, and my balance will never be the same. Find someone twice your size to smash your head with a lamp, break most of your body, and then fall 30 feet. Then maybe we'll talk. Wait, don't forget to add being stabbed in the back and betrayed by someone you trusted more than life itself. Realizing you never loved me was worse than rehab," Mike added, grinning. "Mike, that's not true," I countered. He chuckled. "The truth sets you free, but not before it breaks you." Unsure of how to respond, I stammered, I don't know what to say, Mike. He leaned back as Tom the cat leapt off his lap. "Come on, Clara, speaking the truth is easy. It's weaving a web of lies that's hard. Or are you using Homer Simpson's logic on me? It takes two to lie, one to lie and one to listen." My anger started to rise. "I'm not some fool, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel." He smirked. "We all know light travels faster than sound. That's why some people seem bright until they speak. You seem to fit that category just fine." Trying to stay calm, I said, "Did you really have to target Amy? After you filed complaints with the state council, they revoked her liquor license. She lost the bar." Mike intertwined his fingers. "Yes, it seems the Drinks Commission takes its rules seriously. They don't allow bar owners to have non-employees serve drinks. Amy sent you to that table where you got drunk. I see no reason why Amy shouldn't face the consequences." "It wasn't her fault, Mike. The bar was busy that night. Amy was too overwhelmed to monitor my actions." He glared at me. "Amy wasn't the only one busy that night, were you, Clara?" I was nearly in tears. "Amy was my oldest friend. Now she won't even speak to me, and she was also your friend." I dried my tears. "Your injury, it changed you, and it's my fault. You've always been such a decent guy, Mike. Why did you feel the need to burn Amy?" Mike leaned in. "Burn Amy? Right now, I guess I'm just ashes, because you know what they say about where nice guys finish. Good guys finish last. Don't mistake kindness for weakness again." He leaned back. "So, Clara, if you can't hang with the cool crowd, step off your broomstick." "It was a nightmare. You couldn't just take it out on me, could you, Mike? Hasn't there been enough pain and suffering? The DA didn't file charges, calling it a group riot." He gestured to a folder with the state seal. "Lies written in ink can't conceal facts written in blood." "Blood? Is that what you want, Mike? My blood? We lost the idiot's lawsuit because your testimony supported his case." Mike stared. "I think that guy who'll never walk again and will live with a colostomy bag deserves better than memories of you, Clara." Mike said, looking at me. "Some people are only alive because it's illegal to shoot them." Suddenly, a loud crash signaled the arrival of a large motorcycle pulling up behind the BMW. The rider embodied the stereotypical biker image, adorned with tattoos, clad in a leather vest, gloves, and sunglasses. Instead of a helmet, he sported a Harley-Davidson scarf wrapped around his head. As he dismounted, it became apparent that he was short, yet extraordinarily muscular, resembling a sturdy fire hydrant. My spirit sank as the biker directed his attention to the box on the back of his bike. Emerging from it, the big black cat leaped out and stretched on. Over the next few days, I sank deeper into my despair. Moving up north to help my aunt at her tavern was a far cry from the life I had envisioned. The small town was bleak, filled with mining families and an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. The tavern, a dilapidated building with a creaky sign, was a gathering place for the locals to drown their sorrows. My aunt, a stern woman with no time for nonsense, put me to work immediately. "Clara, we need more hands on deck," she barked, handing me a rag and pointing to a sticky table. "Get to it!" I nodded, biting back the urge to complain. This was my life now, wiping down tables, serving drinks, and listening to the miners' endless stories of hardship. The tavern's regulars, a rough crowd, eyed me with suspicion at first. But as days turned into weeks, I became a part of their world. They accepted me, and in a strange way it felt like a twisted form of redemption. One evening, as the tavern buzzed with the usual noise, a familiar figure walked in. It was Nancy. She spotted me and made her way over, her dog trotting behind her. "Clara," she said, taking a seat at the bar. "Fancy meeting you here." I sighed, wiping down the counter. "What do you want, Nancy?" She shrugged, lighting a cigarette. "Just passing through. Thought I'd check on you." "Well, as you can see, I'm doing just fine," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Nancy took a drag from her cigarette, her eyes narrowing. "You still haven't learned, have you? This isn't about what you want, Clara. It's about facing the consequences of your actions." I slammed the rag on the counter, my patience wearing thin. "What do you know about consequences? You walked away from everything." "And you didn't?" Nancy shot back. "You think running up here to hide in this backwater town absolves you of your mistakes? You're still the same selfish person." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see how much. "Why are you here, Nancy, to rub salt in the wound?" "No," she said softly, surprising me. "I came to offer you a chance to make things right." I scoffed. "And how do you propose I do that?" "By helping me with a project," she replied. "There's an old community center here that needs renovating. It's falling apart and the town doesn't have the funds to fix it. I thought you might want to put your skills to good use." I stared at her, disbelief etched on my face. "You want me to help you? After everything?" "Yes," Nancy said, her tone sincere. "It's a chance to do something good for a change, to make up for the past." I considered her offer, my mind racing. The idea of working alongside Nancy was repulsive, but the chance to make a positive impact was tempting. Maybe this was the opportunity I needed to turn my life around. "All right," I said finally. "I'll help, but this doesn't mean we're friends." Nancy smiled, a hint of relief in her eyes. "I wouldn't dream of it." The next few weeks were grueling. The community center was in worse shape than I had imagined. Walls crumbling, windows shattered, and the roof leaking. But slowly, with Nancy's help, we began to make progress. The locals, curious about our efforts, started to pitch in. It became a community project, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of purpose. One day, as we were patching up a particularly stubborn section of the roof, Nancy turned to me. "You know, Clara, this town isn't so bad. The people here are tough, but they've got heart." I nodded, wiping sweat from my brow. "Yeah, they do. I guess I needed to see that for myself." Nancy smiled. "Sometimes it's not about where you are, but what you do with the opportunities you get." As the community center slowly transformed, so did I. The work was hard, but it was rewarding. And with each nail hammered and each wall painted, I felt a little more of my old self slipping away. I was becoming someone new, someone better. But despite the progress, the past still haunted me. One evening, as I was locking up the community center, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Clara." I turned to see Mike standing there, Tom the cat perched on his shoulder. He looked different, healthier, stronger, but his eyes still held the pain of our past. "Mike," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I heard about what you've been doing here. The community center, it's impressive. I shrugged, trying to play it off. It's just a project. No, Mike said firmly. It's more than that. You've changed, Clara. I can see it. Tears welled up in my eyes. I'm trying, Mike. I really am. He reached out, gently wiping a tear from my cheek. I know, and I believe in second chances. I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of resentment, but all I saw was a man who had been through hell and come out the other side, just like me. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Let's take it one day at a time. As Mike and I stood there, with Tom the cat purring between us, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. And in that moment, surrounded by the remnants of my past and the promise of a new beginning, I knew that anything was possible. All it took was a little faith, a lot of hard work, and the willingness to believe in the power of redemption.